This interview is made possible by the View Conference. I'm your host, Jerry Ors from Kids First, and right now we are with Milan Jovovic. He is the CCO of Nordeus Games. Nordeus is a mobile game producer. They have made many great games that have millions of downloads. Their games include Top 11 Football Manager, Heroic Magic Duel, as well as Golden Boot. Milan, thank you so much for being here today.
Hey Jerry, thanks for interviewing me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Absolutely, I am too. So to get started with this conversation, I want to talk a little bit about, in video games, the difference between creativity and playability. Because, for me, from the film world, the only real thing we need to care about is if the audience is being entertained, if they're glued to the screen. Video games, you have to do that too, but it's so much more complicated because it's an interactive medium. So how do you balance that? The fact that it's interactive, that the players need to have fun, but also that, it's a creative experience that you want your artists to be able to express themselves. How do you balance those two things?
That's a great question, Jerry. And it kind of, if you're a game maker, I'm sure this is a topic here we can all talk for a few hours or days even. And I was thinking about like what to answer, and it kind of reminds me of the one of the earliest career advice that I got when I was in gaming from my first mentor, Mark Skaggs. Is a very well established game developer, and he asked me one crucial question that kind of still rings in my ears is when you want to embark on a journey to be a game maker, one question to ask yourself is, are you an artist or you're a craftsman, or what do you want to be? And it kind of starts separating very different forms of games. Is on one end you create games that kind of express your personality, your creativity. On another hand, you want to have a commercial product. And kind of those two are not mutually exclusive, of course, but like it's a kind of division already. And I decided to be a craftsman. So the kind of games that I want to make is not for myself, not to kind of express who I am as an art form, but more of a what kind of a users do I want to address with this? What kind of an experience do I want to give them, and what will blow them away? So those that's a kind of a different focus. And so it's a lot about seeking understanding who your audience is, and then kind of starting to use your creative instincts to kind of, okay, so what great story can I tell them, and what great experience can I craft for them? So that's kind of how you separate the two. A lot of people kind of ask, is game making a science or is it an art form? It's a spectrum. It's not really a black or white. So on one end, there's a lot of science in it. There's a lot of engineering, a lot of software, a lot of data science. There's a lot of sciences in psychology and like a lot of like really proper science. But on the other hand, there's a lot of things that you need to really invent. There's a lot of things that you need to kind of express. You need to kind of bring your feelings. You need to kind of bring your own kind of identity to it. And then if I'm like, okay, where on this spectrum this is probably more an art form than it is like a science. Like we're not making a software solution. We're making an entertainment form. So there's a lot of discussion about what is fun. That's if a movie is about telling a great story, it's yeah, there are visual effects, like the movie looks amazing, there's a great acting, but underlying it's like it's all about telling an amazing story. In games, there is story elements, there's visuals, there's like there are quite a lot of similarities, a lot of creative overlaps, but the kind of core and essence is the player having fun? Kind of to your point, like is the audience glued to the screen? Like is if I'm taking the phone to play a mobile game, like is it really hard for you to get the phone away from me? Like am I really into that game? So the fun is the focus of what we're trying to do.
Mm. What I found really interesting about what you said is the difference between the science and the art of making video games. And it actually connects to another interview the View Conference did. The audience should definitely check it out with Matt Almernick, who is making games for Achille Interactive. And those games are for a medical purpose. So it's much closer to a science than what Nordeus is doing. And it's still an art form. So it's fascinating to hear your perspective since you are making more traditional video games. Now, something you said leads me to my next question. You have made a lot of different types of games. More specifically, Golden Boot and Football Manager are targeted towards European football fans. That is their main demographic because that's what they're about. But Heroic Magic Duel is a lot more universal. It doesn't really have a core audience because it can be played the same all over the world. It's not set to one group of people. So can you talk a little bit about the differences to appealing to a much, much more global audience for a game like Heroic?
Yeah, it's a great question. I need to congratulate you on calling this a football experience and not a soccer experience. So really thank you for that. So me and you might have a kind of different view on what is a more mainstream out of the two games. To me, I always view football as one of the global phenomena. It's being enjoyed by billions of people around the planet. So it's one of the most fascinating evergreen motivations that keeps people glued to the either TV screen or going to stadiums or being a fan of something. So to me, I always look at Top 11 as the mainstream product, even though it's like super nerdy and geeky. On the other hand, I don't really believe you can make a game for everybody. Very similar to the movies. Let's use that analogy. Like there are people who like comedies. There are people who like action movies. There are people who like sci-fi. There are people who like all of that. But it's really difficult to make a movie that's both like an action and a comedy and a sci-fi and thriller and a horror and everything. Like it's really difficult. Same story in games. The audience is super big, so you might see, hey, football sounds like a niche product. Only football fans will play it. But yeah, that niche has like, I don't know, 4 billion people in it. It's a really kind of good niche to be in. So again, you need to really understand who your audience is. In our case, we always kind of go for audience that it is really big. In terms of football, that's one really amazing but big fantasy. So is the epic fantasy. There's so many people that are into battling, they're into strategy, they're into epic fantasy as a theme. So we try to kind of deliver on those big fantasies and that they kind of draw a lot of people in it. Why? Because we really want to make games being a very social experiences, and so you need a lot of players to really enjoy the game.
Mm. I want to switch subjects and go towards your career, Nordeus' history for a bit. So, Top 11 was your guys' first games, and it came out about 11 years ago, if I'm correct. And before that, you guys were Microsoft infrastructure employees. You and the other co-founders were in Microsoft, and Microsoft infrastructure testing is a very far cry away from video games. So, can you talk a little bit about that transition between working at a big company like Microsoft and then doing your own startup in video games?
Oh yeah, that's a great story and a great question again. So I went into Microsoft. That was one of the things I always wanted to do. It's like wanted to be a software engineer. I always find computers fascinating, and things that you can do with a computer are fascinating. But I wrote my first piece of software, and I was like 7th grade or 6th grade. I can't remember. And I remember that was a time like the second piece of software, like the first piece of software was like Hello World, like I read it in a book, and then the second piece of software was like a game. It was a quiz I made from a family. I think it was a geography quiz or something like that. So like very quickly I was like, hey, like you can make games, and actually I think I went into I don't really remember, but I think I went into computer science because I really wanted to make games. A few years passed, I finished school, I went to Microsoft. At the time, it was a great job, a great learning opportunity. I'm still very grateful for all the things that I've learned. And specifically for one thing that I learned at Microsoft, which is what I don't like. And I think that's a kind of a super important questions, is maybe an advice to your audience is, explore and at least, see what you don't like, pursue your dreams, but like, just, jump at opportunities as well. What I learned I don't like is working in a big company. It's just a personal thing. And then say, okay, what would be a perfect environment for me? A small company. And then, hey, let's build one. And then, that's what we decide. We really want to build a small company. We don't want like layers and layers. We don't want like politics. We don't, we kind of, okay, the things that we hate about Microsoft, let's build the opposite of that. And also the things that we love about Microsoft, let's keep those. Like being with super smart people, really deeply caring about what you're doing, working on cutting edge stuff. Like all of those things is what we still pursue. Some of the big challenges that I have shifting is the same as it's probably like the same challenges I had when I was taking my first job or changing industry or changing what I'm doing, is how to deal with the unknown. And the super positive thing about that, whenever you make a big change, is you have this thing for a little while. It's called beginner's mindset. That is a thing that keeps you naive and keeps you dreamy, and don't ever lose that, because that will help you solve problems the way that others are cannot, because others don't have the beginner's mindset. We were naive. We were like three guys in Belgrade jamming on a game, and then you had like companies like EA who's jamming on a similar game for 25 years. And like, how can we possibly know more? Well, it turns out that we had an angle that that was different, simply because we didn't know a lot about the industry. So I look at it as a super positive thing. Counter to that is, you need to be super humble, especially about things that you don't know. Don't ever assume that you know more than everybody else. Actually, you probably know much less than most of the people when you enter a new business, a new role, or a new career, new industry. So just be aware of that. Like have a super big level of self-awareness, and that's not a bad thing. If you work with that, you can actually turn that into something positive. The way we turn that into something positive is like, okay, we're the stupidest kid in the block, we have this crazy idea. What are we going to do? But let's get somebody who's smarter than us to work with us. So like always try to surround yourself with people who are better than you. Don't be afraid of you not knowing something. It's actually okay. I'm pretty good at something, and I'm pretty bad at something else. Well, I'll find a person who is way better than me than I am. So I like to kind of think of it as jumping into something new gives you this unique opportunity to have a beginner's mindset, and you being humble about what you don't know. Both of those things are protecting you, and are going to actually your strength.
I love that all the advice you just gave can be applied to so many different industries aside from video games. It's like this universal advice that just leads to being able to explore and complete your passion and goals. And I love how applicable and how universal that all is. Now, looking at the industry you guys were going in, you joined this, it was around 2009, 2010, if my math is correct. And that was a time when online video games were kind of becoming a thing. Mobile video games were very, very early in development. I mean, the iPhone was only a few, like 4 or 5 years old at that point. So how did you enter this industry that was basically in its infancy? It was still being defined. Of course, now everyone knows what online mobile gaming is, but back then, it was a very niche thing.
Yes. I remember it sort of vividly. It was like 11 years ago. So what I do remember is that Facebook was fascinating. Like we're all on Facebook. Our parents were on Facebook. Like it was that popular. And then you saw like there was a lot of games, and people calling games. And then there was a phenomenon of a new generation of gamers. What that meant is you're not a traditional gamer. You're not a console gamer or a PC gamer. You're this new Facebook gamer. So your first games you ever played were on Facebook. Why? Because it was so easy. So you click on your Facebook.com and you can play a game. So it was a platform that kind of revolutionized game distribution, to be specific. What that meant is traditionally before you had, so I heard, I don't know, I never worked in the industry before. But you used to have like a game studio, which would make a game, and then you have a game publisher. Very usually those two were two different companies. So you needed to really, as a studio, find a publisher who wants to publish your game, and then the publisher would literally put it on a shelf in a GameStop store or something like that. Stuff that doesn't exist anymore. It's not as popular. That all changed with online Facebook distribution. So any developer could publish anything on Facebook. So obviously, there were a lot of companies. You could all of a sudden have a company in Belgrade, Serbia, in the middle of nowhere, making a game that's globally distributed and popular. So that thing was super amazing. Being early in an industry, or being an early adopter of anything, you always kind of have two kinds of people. You have people who see everything as a problem, and have people who see everything as an opportunity. And try to be as much of the opportunity guy as you can. We saw a lot of opportunity. The early games on Facebook were, textual. There were games like Mafia Wars. It was all text. It was super, super simple, and it was super, super engaging. And then we're like, hey, if this is popular, imagine a real game on Facebook. How great would that be? So that was our naiveness that kind of led us to a breakthrough. So we made a game that that was at the perfect time for the perfect audience at the right time. So that was the beginning. And then, as you said, the smartphones were in their infancy, and for us it was kind of a logical. If you can play it on Facebook, it was so easy. Imagine that you just walk away from your screen, grab a phone and just continue playing. So for us, that was kind of normal. And then again, it was a revolutionary at the time. So many things changed since, but that was the beginnings. It was super exciting.
It definitely has changed so much, and it's become even more platformless with video games like Fortnite and Minecraft. They have a PC version, they have a console version, and they have a mobile version, and they can all play together in a happy trio, and it's just amazing where video games have went. I still remember when if you upgraded to a new console, you couldn't play any of those games again. They were gone. They were just collecting dust on a shelf. It's amazing how video games have changed for the better. Now, there are other ways video games have changed, and one of those biggest ways is microtransactions. Mobile games are often free, and to make money, they do in-game purchases. Now, how does Nordeus Games balance the in-game purchases? Because, of course, it is a company, the games need to make money, but also the enjoyability of the game, making sure that it doesn't block the player's ability to go through the game and have fun.
It's a great question, Jerry. I'm sure you experienced that pain a lot as a player, if the game is greedy and wanting your money. So I just want to kind of say a few words about free to play. Free to play is amazing. If you think about it, like before, as a kid, you would need to make a really tough choice for Christmas. So you would probably get one game or two games or whatever. They were quite expensive. For your parents, that would be a lot of money. And then you need to kind of say, oh, do I go for this or that? Free to play completely changed that. So it eliminated like the toughest choice for the consumers. Is like all of a sudden I can try everything for free. And it's been an amazing thing. And then how free to play games make money is if people voluntarily decide to go for an add-on or purchase something within the game to kind of have even better experience. So it's a very basic model. What happens is there's a lot of games that kind of are aware of those motivations and kind of try to have very aggressive monetization strategies, and then kind of starts annoying the consumers. Our philosophy on free-to-play is very simple, and we would like to kind of keep it very simple. No matter who you are, no matter what player you are in the game, you need to have an amazing experience. And there are people that have very different currencies available to them. So somebody has a lot of time, somebody has a lot of skill, somebody has a lot of friends, somebody has a lot of money. We try to balance it so that everybody can have an amazing experience. So meaning a kid in high school who has a lot of friends, has a lot of time, but he's really down on, or maybe has a lot of skill, but he's really down on money. Like money is really an obstacle for him. He can reach the ultimate level, or he can be competitive if it's at a competitive game, or whatever the game is. He has to have a lot of fun. The same way, if somebody who's maybe a business person, and he's a family person, and it's like, oh, okay, I don't have that much skill anymore. I used to play games, but I'm not as skilled as I used to be. I have some time in the evening, maybe a few friends, but I can pay to skip something. If those two, very extreme different people can have the same experience, if we actually match made so they can have fun and enjoy it, and call the game fair, that to us is a good design. Anything that kind of counterbalances that is not good. If the game favors somebody who has just infinite time, people with money are going to be angry, and so it's the other way around.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And it's interesting because if you look at the film equivalent of that, there is no way of doing that. If you have a person who really likes deep, complicated films but doesn't have a lot of time, and you like a person who loves simple films and has plenty of time, you're not going to be able to find a happy middle that is going to appeal to both of them. You're just going to have to make two films for two different audiences. But for video games, because it adapts to the player, you can really have an experience that attracts a whole wide range. Now, we are running low on time, but I wanted to ask you before we ended, what advice would you give to the next generation of video game artists? Because the industry is still changing constantly, and a bigger generation than ever before, is going to the video game industry. So what advice would you give them?
So I'm going to give a very, very vanilla advice, which I believe is very important. Always go for your motivation. Uh, Motivation is something that will fuel you for your life. If you are, curious about something, if you have this drive to just, or like, I need to learn more, I need to figure out more, I need to, there's so many things that interest me about something, that's probably a very good sign that this is for you. If it's about the video games, if the choice that you're making is, should I pursue a career in video games or not? My question to you would be, is this something that will keep you running for years and years and years? That's the only question you need to ask yourself. You can definitely have success, or you can have a well-paid job, or you can meet a lot of smart people and friends, you can learn a lot, you can progress in your career. Like, all those things are kind of a super easy to do, but you really need to be interested in that.
I think that's some amazing advice, and I really hope our viewers listen to it. But thank you so much, Milan, for talking to me all about Nordeus, all about your career, and all about your experiences.
Thanks, Jared. This was an amazing set of questions. I really enjoyed our discussion, and unfortunately, this ended. I had so much more to say. Thank you a lot for your time.
Absolutely. For our audience, make sure to go to Nordeus.com for more information about Nordeus' amazing video games as well as their fascinating history. This interview is made possible by the View Conference. The View Conference is a yearly CG event that's happening both online and in person in Italy. It's happening between October 18th and October 23rd. For information about events like these and how you can get tickets, go to ViewConference.It. I'm your host, Jerry Orris from Kids First. Bye.